Okay. Hi, I'm Lijana Wallenda. I am a speaker, a high wire walker, a costume designer, a mother, and I'm here today with Ed Hart. You're listening to From the Hart podcast.
Lijana and I both belong to the National Speaker Association. We attended their Influence Conference in late July in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yes.
Saw each other throughout the 4 days or so. Finally, I think the very last session, we ended up sitting next to each other, started talking, one thing led to another, and she says, "Oh, I'm a high wire actor. I'm part of a family." I said, "Oh, kind of like the Flying Wallenda." She goes, "Yeah, that is who we are." So there you go. So it's a famous name I think most of us have heard before we've known anybody. So for me, you're the first member of the family I've met. And for many of our listeners, you're probably going to be the first exposure to the Wallendas as well. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on your bio. And as I mentioned before we hit record, probably just weave the conversation around your bio a little bit and then talk a lot about your speaking and the things that you're doing. And obviously, as we've been promoting this, we've been telling people about the Great Fall, if you will. I don't know how you call it, but certainly, 8 years ago,
Yes.
and then how you recover from that. And I have the first question I'm going to ask you, but not yet, is why, and we'll get to that in a second. And that's really the focus of the podcast, is why people do what they do.
Okay.
So Lijana was born into as you're already hearing, as you're watching and listening, born into an extraordinary group of artists that have been commonly referred to as the first family of the air, the Wallendas. Some of you may have heard the term the Flying Wallendas. As far back as she can remember, she traveled in the unique world of the circus, along with her extended family members, probably the first circus member I've interviewed, and maybe the first circus member you've listened to on any podcast. You watched your family perform breathtaking feats, high wire, and you dreamed someday as a child of growing up and being part of this first family of the air. Talk about that. What was the earliest memory you have of saying, "I want to do that"?
Gosh, that's hard to say. I've walked a wire before I can remember. I don't remember not being able to walk a wire. My mom was actually 6 months pregnant with me, still performing on the high wire.
So you were walking the wire before you were walking.
Exactly. I've been up there before I was born. I'd always walked wire and played in our backyard. We always had a low wire a few feet off the ground. So my little brother and I would play around and pretend like we were my mom and dad. And so it was always something I kind of just played around doing. But I do know when I was 13 years old, I decided I wanted to start performing professionally in the performances with my mom and dad. And so I went to them and asked them if I could start performing. And they said, "Well, go out and practice every day. Show us that you mean business here." So I did. And they saw I was serious. And then they came out and started working with me. And so I ended up making my professional high wire debut at the age of 13.
So I'm guessing that as a child, you're learning on a wire. There's a foot off the ground. If you fall, you get a scratch.
Yeah.
You move up to 5 feet off the ground. You move up to 10 feet. How's that process? When does it go? It's probably always scary, but when does it go from, okay, I fall off, I get back up, I fall off, I get back up, to if I fall, this could hurt?
Yeah. So yeah, you start down low, like you said. But my parents were very diligent in our training, my brother and I, in that even down low, we were never allowed to just step off and walk away. We always, if we were going to get off the wire, if we weren't going to complete the walk to the end to the other platform and we decided to get off, correct, we'd have to turn and grab the wire physically, just so it was so in our body to turn and grab the wire if anything did happen. So, we got trained like that when we were down low, and you go from about a 2-3 foot wire up to a 10-foot wire. And that's when it gets a little scary, because when you're up there, it's only 10 feet, but it still looks pretty high when you're up there looking down.
Stand on your rooftop and think of what that looks like. That's about 10 feet, and it's scary, especially as a kid.
So, move to that height, and you just start doing laps back and forth on the wire to get comfortable with that. And once you're comfortable with that, you graduate to the 30-foot wire, which is our normal performing height for normal performances. Look, it was really scary the first time. I remember my dad was on the ground below, watching above, like kind of spotting me. And I remember taking the step out with my balancing pole, and my adrenaline was going so fast that the pole felt like it weighed nothing. And I remember saying, "Dad, I don't think this is my pole." He's like, "No, you're fine. It's your pole. You're fine." So yeah, it was pretty scary at first, but after doing it over and over again, it becomes very comfortable, almost to a fault, where I found myself honestly standing on a chair on top of a 7-person pyramid, 45 feet in the air, and my mind does wander. My mind would think about, what I want to do after the show or whatever, and that's going to say, "No, I'm up here. I got to pay attention to what I'm doing." So it does get very comfortable. But let me tell you, if there's any little movement, a little off, you snap right back in it.
I was going to say, the minute, it's a cold slap or a cold splash of water on the face, I would imagine. I've thought about that a lot with athletes. I've worked in the world of athletics, both from a management standpoint as well as of playing sports growing up and kids in it and fan now and so forth. But it seems like the difference between the good performers and the great performers, the training is the training. I wouldn't say everybody trains the same because that's not true. But you could have an athlete, you could have a high wire act or a professional football player or basketball player who trains equally to the others. And the difference is what happens on that playing field between the ears, as they say.
Yep.
And we lose our concentration. I've had podcast interviews or times at work where my mind is about what I'm having for dinner tonight, but my life isn't in peril if I think too much about what I'm going to do for dinner or
Yes.
what I'm going to do after this conversation. How do you keep that focus? How do you prepare for that? Because you can't be up there walking across Times Square thinking
Uh-huh.
about dinner tonight. How do you
Yeah.
how do you just
Yeah.
condition yourself to stay so focused?
Well, you just have to remind yourself, nope, but there's actually real risks here. I got to focus on what I'm doing, And the preparation is training,
Yeah.
doing laps back and forth, building that extra strength. I always do any performance I'm going to do, I do 3 times the length with no break because I want to have that extra strength if something
Sure.
goes wrong. So you prepare by doing those hours on the wire back and forth and then remembering that even though there's all these flashy, like in Times Square, all these flashing lights up, at your side and all, you can't look at that because, you're on a wire 250 feet in the air. So you just
Right.
have to remember where you're at and keep focused.
Talk about that balance pole. That's something that we don't really think about that often, but I've never watched a high wire act without it. So obviously it's the
Yeah.
most critical tool that you have.
You know,
It's,
there, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I'm eager to hear more about that pole and how it, what the physics of it and also the mental aspect of it.
Sure, sure. So there are wire walkers that walk without a pole that balance like
Okay.
this. It's just not my family's style. We were more known for doing pyramids, stacking, having a bar between two men's shoulders, and then I would stand on top or my mom, whatever. And that kind of wire walking, you need to stay very solid in your whole body, and all that you move is your balancing pole to keep you balanced. You
Mm.
maneuver that. So yeah, and it's heavy. So you got to build up your biceps and your
Yeah.
wrists, forearms, and they start aching and stuff and cramping when you start out. But you got to keep pushing through that pain and do those laps back and forth and build that strength. But yeah, it's you basically keep your body as solid as you can, and you move that balancing pole to keep you steady on the wire, so that the person on the shoulders above you has a solid playing field that they're standing on.
Well, and I would imagine that, like in any team sport, if you want to call it that for a moment, the faith and confidence that you have to have in your teammates has to be paramount.
100%. 100%. And that's part of the reason, we do those laps. Like I'm going to be going down to Florida to work with my brother, and I'm helping him train some new guys. And what I do is I have them do laps back and forth, but I do them with them. I'm there talking with them the whole time. We build that camaraderie and that relationship between ourselves. And I'm there, I'm showing them I'm willing to put that work in too with them. And yeah, it just builds that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So I led off with this in the conversation, and the focus of the From the Heart podcast is really to get more to the why behind what people do. So high wire walking, just one word question, why?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's what I always saw my parents do. And then
Mhm.
when I started performing at 13, I just got that performing bug bit me, man. I just fell in
Mm.
love with it. And so it's my passion, but I hope that it's deeper than that, what we do. I hope that we're inspiring people because we are doing the seemingly impossible, walking on a wire 5/8 of an inch, smaller than that in
Yeah,
diameter,
right.
with people stacked on top of each other in pyramids. And I'm hoping that inspires people that they can do the seemingly impossible too. If you work hard enough, you can do anything. So, there's different levels to it, right? Different
Sure.
layers to why I do it. And now after the accident that you briefly mentioned, it's even
Yeah.
more so like to inspire people and to conquer my fears and all of that. It's even a bigger thing for me now.
Yeah. And let me ask you one quick question, and then I want to get into the accident and then the
Okay,
lessons learned, if you don't mind.
sure.
What you talked about inspiring other people, and in your bio, you talk about how part of this is to share with the world what the human spirit is capable of achieving. What feedback have you had? Are there any stories? I'm sure there are, but can you think of a story or two of somebody who talked to you after they saw you and say, "Wow, this inspired me to dot dot dot, and because of you, I did." whatever. Any stories come to mind of that for you?
Well, more after the accident. I think it's people
Okay.
came forward more after the accident. You know,
Yeah.
there's many people that reached out after they saw me conquer my fear and my comeback performance and tell me how inspired they were. There's one young girl in particular. She reached out. She went to see my brother perform last winter, and we end up she brought a thing she had done painted for me, and she had all these medical problems and happened to see my comeback performance on TV while she was recovering from, I think, one of her surgeries, I want to say. And so it's really cool to hear from her how I've sort of, my brother and I both have sort of inspired her to get through all these medical things that she's dealing with. So yeah, that's the one
Yeah.
that's in mind right
That
now.
that's it's awesome. I've never walked a high wire and had somebody been inspired by that, but it is fun to hear people come to you and say, "Wow, because of what you said or what you did, it
Yeah,
inspired me to do this." All
yeah,
right, so it's 2017. Was that when
yeah,
the accident took place?
correct.
So I would imagine that there's an amount of fear and concern every time you get on the wire, but you can't obviously, to your point, let that consume you. Otherwise, you wouldn't
Yeah,
do it or you wouldn't do
yeah,
it well.
yeah.
How do you block that fear out? And maybe let's go to the morning of, had anything, was this just a freak accident or were there contributing factors prior to that might
Uh-huh.
have been red flags or warning signs of any kind of a fall like this?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the fear part. You can't have that fear. That fear
Right.
might be the beginning, but it's a deep respect for walking the
Mm,
wire, realizing the consequences, but you can't be up there trembling in fear. You have to get past that in your training because you're in your head too much if you're filled with
yeah.
that fear. So it's a deep respect. So yeah, my brother had called me and said that he wanted to break our own Guinness Book World Record and do the 8-person 4-level pyramid on the high wire, which we had
Mm,
done back in 2001 in Japan, and we currently still hold that world record. He wanted to do the same pyramid but a higher height. Asked if I want to do it. I said yes, of course. Went
mm,
down, started training. Everything felt great. We were in one of the final rehearsals before the show was to open. So
mm,
we were up at full height in the tent where we were going to perform. And the guys below me, I was in the second level. So the guys below me built up the pyramid. I was, on the second level, built up the people above me. We're walking out, and I remember it feeling really solid. Felt
mm.
great. And I said out loud, guys, this feels great. And then within seconds of that statement, I felt something that felt like a jolt. It was something I never felt in my life
Mm.
before. We don't exactly know where it came from. When there's that many people in a pyramid and that many levels, there's any little movement, it kind of ripples up and down. We don't exactly know honestly what happened, but I remember feeling that jolt and remembering that there's someone on a bar. There's two people above me on a bar on my shoulder. So I was trying to stay as solid as I could. And
Yeah.
like I said, use that balancing pole. And I remember going up and down, and then it went completely vertical,
Mm.
which had never happened in my life.
Right.
And it pulled me off, and I kind of got pulled, I feel like a little bit backwards and off the wire. And I was real cool about it. It was like, oh, okay, this is happening. I need to turn and grab the wire like my parents had taught us. So I turned to look at the wire. It was below me at that moment because it was like right away. And I wanted to reach for it, but I was too far away because I was in the
Mm.
second level. So I fell away. Yeah. So I saw the wire below me, and I saw, what felt very slow in the moment rise above me. And I stayed really calm. I remember thinking, okay, what do I do now? And I thought about my son. He was 5 at the time. So I for some reason I was like, I need to have my right side, my stronger side, to be able to pick him up and carry him around. So I remember trying to twist to the left. Weird, I don't know why,
It's
but
amazing how many thoughts you can have in an instant.
it is. And so I must have somewhat accomplished that because I ended up breaking most of the things on the right side, the left side of my body. So and then I just saw there was a big round red mat inside the circus ring, and I just saw it getting closer and closer to my face as I was falling. And yeah, smacked into the ground, never lost consciousness. Thought I was fine. Kept trying to get up because I was so worried I had no idea who had fallen to the ground, who hadn't,
Right.
how everyone was so concerned. And my brother was at my side right away. He was able to catch the wire, like my parents had taught us. He was in the first level, so he was right there. He was able to grab
Yeah.
it.
Straight fall for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he made it safely down, was at my side right away. And he kept saying, don't get up. And I was like, but I'm fine.
Hmm.
And there's even video footage of me laying on my back, kicking my legs in the air because I remember My great uncle Mario back in 1962, he was 18 at the time, and they were doing the seven-person pyramid, and it ended up falling, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And I was thinking about him, and I wanted my brother to know,
I'm
look,
gonna move my legs right away. I'm okay.
yeah, I wanted him to know that, but he kept saying, no, stay down. And what he told me later is that yeah, I was completely unrecognizable within a minute of the
Wow.
accident. My face was so swollen out there. There was blood coming out from it was
You were
bad.
able to even speak.
I was speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was fine. I had
Yeah.
no idea. Um, so eventually I did lay there, like he said, and waited for the paramedics to arrive. Yeah, it was something.
Praise to God that you're okay and that you
Amen.
didn't
All the
end up
glory to God.
worse. Yeah,
Yep, yep,
100%.
yep. It's a complete
What
miracle.
Gosh, there's so many questions that come to mind, and people who are listening are probably screaming their questions into their car radio or what have you right now. And hopefully, I'll do them justice and ask the right questions here. And if there's questions that other interviewers have asked that I don't answer, please just jump in and say. But what comes to mind for me to ask is the following moments, hours, days. Walk me through that timeline or that process of, did you ever think I'm never going to do this again, or I'm getting right back up, or I'm sure you were told by many, maybe within the family, maybe just friends or relatives or what have you, don't do that anymore. Just that whole, because when we fail, most of us fail, we get back up, we fail, we get back up, we fail, we get back up. This, and not that you failed, that's not my point, but after a fall like this, it would be real easy to say, look, been there, done it. I got a 5-year-old. I probably shouldn't do this anymore. There are other ways I can make a living. Was there a process of, I'm never going to do this again? And maybe I'll do it. I'm definitely doing it, or kind
Yeah.
of emotionally what went on?
So it's interesting. I never thought that I wouldn't get on the wire. It was always in my head, like, it's just what you do. You get back up there. Now, we didn't know in the hospital, we didn't know what the doctors didn't know if I'd survive that first night. They told my dad. We
Yeah.
didn't
Wow.
know how, if I could walk properly. We didn't know what was going to happen. And that was tough because my whole identity was wrapped around being a high wire walker, being a performer. And then I find myself in the trauma unit, with my face swollen out to here, looking like a monster, not knowing if I could walk the wire anymore. Really, really hard. But I never thought that I wouldn't walk the wire again. When I had a ton of injuries. One of them was my broken calcaneus, a bone in my heel, which is actually worse than it sounds. The doctor said it's a really bad quality of life after you break that bone. Praise God, it's not for me. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
right.
We didn't know, but as soon as I was given clearance to put weight back on, it was probably 6 weeks after that I was allowed to finally put weight on that foot again. I got on that little wire in the backyard again. It took a few steps, and it was scary because I was still very broken. I broke every single bone in my face. Like, we didn't talk
Yeah.
about injuries yet. Like, I broke
Right.
every bone in my face, on my arm, a bunch of things, ribs, knocked a bunch of teeth off, sheared teeth in half. But I took those steps and it was scary. But I always thought, oh no, I'll be fine. I'll get back to this. And went through the whole, I was down in Florida for about 2.5 months with my family, because that's where my family lives, like healing up till I was well enough to come back to my home in Las Vegas, get back to life as much as I could. I
Yeah.
was still very broken. I was still in a knee scooter. I still couldn't do much with this arm because still got a rod and screws in here. My face was still, swollen out to here. A bunch of teeth were still missing. I had a big, more face surgeries to come. It was pretty nuts. I have 72 plates and screws in my face, or I had. I don't know how many are in there now, but at the time I had. So it was still pretty tough. But I was like, oh no, I'll still walk the wire. Eventually, I'll get back to it. And I would go on my low wire in the backyard. And I was the coach to some men I trained here in Las Vegas at a show. But that wire was low in our world of wires. It was only about 8 feet high. So I'd go walk on that wire and I was fine. And thought I was fine, but hadn't been back to performing. Had a second face surgery, 9-hour surgery, rebroke every bone in my face to kind of reset them because they weren't set properly the first time. Really intense, really, really tough. Again, starting from zero, I felt like face swollen out to here. But 2 months after that, my brother called me and said that he was in New York City, got permission to string a cable across Times Square, and it was to be a live primetime special on TV. And he asked if I wanted to do it with them. And I said, yes, yes,
You didn't say, "Are you nuts?" You just went to, of course. It's true.
because it's just what I do. And I was like
Yeah.
all excited and gung ho. And I was training on my low wire here in Vegas in my backyard, getting stronger, texting my brother, like how much time I had the wire. We were kind of competitive, back and forth.
Yeah.
And we went down to Florida to start training with him on a higher wire. And the first step I took out on the wire, that fear, that PTSD felt like it got a hold of my throat. It gripped me. And I kept reliving the accident. I kept seeing that image of the big round red mat inside the circus ring getting
Mm.
closer to my face.
Wow.
Um, that was the moment. That was what, a year and a half after the accident? That was, yeah. But that was the moment that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. What am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? It was terrifying. You know, I'd be trading in my brother's backyard and I'd be tears streaming down my face and my brother talking to my sister-in-law, my mom, like my mom, my dad, like, and it was just, and I would go home and just be like, God, just give me peace. I'm going to come back tomorrow. It's going to be better. And it was completely terrifying, and that went on for probably 6 weeks. Just kept going back though, because I had committed and I'm not one to give up. If I tell someone I'll do something and I give them my word, I'm going to do it. But I hated it. I hated walking the wire in those moments.
Were there days where you almost just said or had a conversation with Nick and just said, look, I'm sorry, I just can't.
No,
Yeah.
there wasn't. But there were thoughts in my head like, after this, I'm done. I
Yeah.
said I would do this. I'm going to do this, but I am done
Mm.
because it was terrible. It was terrifying. I
Mm.
hated it, but I kept pushing through and going back. And we had moved to a higher wire that we were practicing on. It was 50 feet in the air.
Wow.
And I was real rigid and stiff and it was taking me a long time. It was taking me, I want to say 25 minutes to get across this 500-foot span of wire. And I had mentioned how back before the accident, I'd be on top of a 7-person pyramid, and my mind would be wandering, thinking about other things. But nothing like that had happened in this practice. I was just focused on that fear and that image of me falling, and it was terrifying. I hated it. But this one particular day, I'm walking the wire, and I noticed all these dragonflies. There were, for whatever reason, there were tons of dragonflies out that day, and they kept landing on the wire and flying off. And I was thinking about that. And then I realized that my mind was not on my fear and my what I was doing. It was on the dragonflies. And it was so emotional in that moment because I remembered in that moment that I love walking the I love that weight of that balancing pole in my arms and how I use it to balance me. And I literally do love the way it feels sliding my foot across the wire. And I was crying because it was so emotional and powerful. And I made it to the opposite end of the wire and stepped off onto the platform. And the man that was up there to help me off the wire said, "What's wrong?" And because he saw that I was crying. And I don't know where this came from. I blurted out, I forgot who I was.
Mm.
And I didn't realize how powerful that was. I
Wow.
didn't realize, I don't even know where that came from because I never thought that through. But I
Yeah.
did. Because when you're going through all that fear, you're hearing all these lies in your head. I kept thinking, I'm not good enough. I failed. I'm a failure. What do I think I'm doing? Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
And you start to believe those lies and think that you're not good at this. But those were lies from the pit of hell, man. And I remembered in that moment how much I love wire walking and that I'm a good
Hmm.
wire walker. And so that was kind of my breakthrough moment, when I knew I was ready to go on to Times Square.
That is so powerful. I love that. I forgot who I was because it just means you were out of your head.
Yeah.
You were responding to every situation in front of you. You weren't reacting even to the dragonflies or
Yeah.
those doubts that you were having. You were just next thing you knew you were there. I think many of us have had similar moments where we're just
100%.
so in the zone, as they call it. Athletes call it that a lot. I'm in the zone. I mean, working. I've been writing. I've written books and I'm been writing and I say, I know it's been 8 hours. Like, wow, look at all I've written. I don't even remember writing or driving somewhere. It's like you get so lost in the process that you don't think about the process. You're so
Yeah.
just lost you're lost in that feeling of the results. How has that, gosh, I could talk about the injury and the recovery all day and we'll go back to it, but that parable, if you will, of your life, of falling, getting back on the wire, crossing step by step, feeling the weight of the pole, getting to the platform, saying the words, I didn't remember who I was. How has that been a parable for other parts of your life?
Look, I think it's a parable for a lot of us. Like you were saying, many of us have gone through very dramatic things and maybe not as dramatic, like losing a job, failing a class in school, whatever. But I feel like that strips pieces of our confidence away and we start to believe that we're not good enough. And
Sure.
what job are we going to get that's going to be better than that? And so I think that I always say that, I forgot who I was, right? It was terrifying. It would have been fine if I stopped walking the wire. I could have gone to my brother and said, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And it would have sucked and he would have to rearrange everything, but that would have been okay. Everyone would have
Mhm.
understood that.
Yeah.
But how sad if I didn't push through those lies, if I didn't conquer those fears and those lies, and I didn't live to my full potential, because I love walking the wire. It is my passion, you
Right.
know? So how sad if I gave up my passion because I believed those lies in my head. I believed that fear that was lying to me, because like that song, Fear's a Liar. It really
Yep,
is,
it is.
right? So that's why I say when we are on the wire, it's not fear. You can't have fear, it's respect,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's in every aspect of my life, even if I'm like, say I'm going to a work function and maybe I don't feel super confident in that moment. I think we all have all these little things, and then you got to remember, oh no, hold your head high.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
How do you from talking with previous generations, you're what, eighth generation or how many
seven,
gener
seven.
seventh generation? So I work with family businesses. That's what I do. 95% of the work I do is with family owned companies. You're a family business, obviously. There's a retirement age, doing the air quotes for those that are
Yeah,
listening and not watching. 65 is a retirement age,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Is there a time, is it each individual just knows when they're done, or is there sort of a exit strategy to get out of the family business, if you will, for the previous six generations, or is there a time frame, hey, by December of 2028 I'm done, or what goes through your mind as far as your retirement from this?
Yeah. So listen, I think it depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
My great grandfather, he was 72 and he actually fell to his death walking away. He was,
Hmm.
but that was his glory. He loved doing that.
Got
So
it.
he died doing what he loved. It wasn't his ability either. He wasn't too old. It was some equipment issue. But my mom is 72 and she still walks the wire with us occasionally and joins
Wow.
joins my brother in the act and all. Not consistent, not all the time, but my dad is still like our main rigger. My mom still makes our wires. She's like they're still kind of very, very involved. And so I think it just depends. There's so many variables. Maybe if there's not enough work, you kind of have to retire, right?
Yeah.
Take something else on, depending on how your body's holding up, all that. I think it just kind of depends. But I feel like my family in general, we really do love it. And so I feel like we kind of have traditionally just pushed it out to a pretty old retirement age. My mom
Yeah.
still loves it. She still loves it. So, and I
Yeah.
hope that she will be able to get on the wire with me when I'm down there performing, because that's the best.
And you and Nick are still planning ahead. You just
Yeah.
mentioned earlier you're going back down to Florida. You're going to be spending.
Yeah.
Is that where most of this takes place?
It's so just so has happened because that's our hometown, and a lot of, my brother has a winter show he does down there, and my
Yeah.
sister, and but we travel the world doing it, so it just kind of depends.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
going to be in California. Anything scheduled out here? And I'm in Southern California, so
not just yet. Hopefully,
we'll look at the site and we'll see when you are coming. So, doing the math, I'm guessing your son's probably about 13 or 14 now.
he's
What do
14.
you tell him as he looks at this business?
It's funny. After he saw me do the Times Square special, he really wanted to walk the wire, so he would go in the backyard and he learned he can walk the wire. He doesn't want to do it anymore, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine. And maybe he'll come back to it at some point, but maybe he won't. So the only thing that I would say if you want to do it is that you're going to practice really hard and I'm going to train you. You're going to let me train you. You're going to listen to me, make sure that he has the ability and he's equipped with every tool he needs and every scenario he's ready for, because that's the most important. So, and of course little business tips here and there as he was going through his career, I'd give him if I had them, but it's mostly about the safety of making sure you build that strong foundation and have the strength and ability that you need to do it.
What would you tell yourself? Let's just pick an age, 16, roughly a little bit older than your son is now. What wisdom or advice would you pass on and say, Liana, maybe do this differently or do this better or don't do this at all? Is there any wisdom that you think of that you wish you would have known that someone might have told you, or maybe they did and you didn't listen, or
Yeah.
just what you would say to yourself from back then
Oh, a couple things. I would tell myself to be more confident in myself, not my
yeah.
wire walking ability, but just in myself as a
In
person.
general? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was always kind of lived a little like insecure and smaller than I should have. So I tell myself to be more confident. And I also would tell myself that I'm so much stronger than I know, because I didn't know that I could go through all of this and come out the way I did. I think we all have so much more strength than we realize and get through so much more than we realize. I draw my strength from my faith in God, but yeah, so
So talk about that. Talk a little bit deeper. Most of my episodes end up getting into that. I obviously have a strong faith. Many of my listeners do. Most of the guests. How has that faith gotten you back on the wire and gotten you to continue this and just driven you in life? You're a motivational speaker. You have a lot of other things going on besides walking on a wire. Talk about your faith and just how that drives your day-to-day decisions and activities.
My faith is everything. I mean, it's everything. Like I talk to God about every decision I
Hmm.
make. Yeah, I couldn't have gotten through this without my faith. Honestly, I believe it's a complete miracle that we're all survived. Five of the eight of us fell to the ground. There were no fatalities. We've all recovered.
Yeah.
And it's a complete miracle. I know it was our angels around us protecting us. But it's interesting. People will say to me, like, you're such a strong woman. Because I am. I'm really strong. I've been through
Yeah.
so many hard things in my life, even outside of the accident, and got through it. But that's not me. That's only my faith in God. That is God that's carried me through
Hmm.
and brought me out the other end a stronger person. So yeah, it's and I believe that, God takes all things and works it together for our good. Even this accident that was so like I didn't know how I was going to come out of that. It was humbling. It was horrible. But that's one of the main reasons. That is the main reason I want to speak because I want to glorify God through this accident.
Yeah.
Like, it's only because of God that I was carried through this and am where I am and was able to conquer the fear, all of it, you know?
So I sense from what you've shared with me in this conversation and when we met in July in Scottsdale that this fall really, I mean, any significant accident or incident in our lives shape us. COVID shaped the world. I
Mhm.
mean, there's all these things that happen. So the question, and you've gotten it before, if you could flip a switch and that fall wouldn't have happened, or you don't flip the switch and it did, what would you do? All the things you've learned since that fall. You don't want to break your bones again, obviously.
That's such a hard, yeah. Yeah, look, I'd never want to fall again, but like I said, I believe that God turns all things around for our good. So I mean, this is what happened. So I guess I would do it again. That's a hard
I like the tradition there. Yes, I do it
again, but I mean,
again.
I certainly don't want to go back. It's interesting, kind of unrelated, but sort of related. I recently got Invisalign because, I had braces after the accident. I have
Sure.
dental implants. I have all these things, but my teeth were kind of knocked out and they had to straighten my teeth to do the surgeries. It was crazy, right? But so I have just one tooth that's slightly crooked, not that bad. And the dentist finally said, let's put you in Invisalign. So I got it. But the first day was like, because I remembered all that stuff in my mouth and
Oh,
in
you're
my
going
jaw,
back to that trauma. Wow.
I was breathing through a trach tube and I was like, I don't want to do this. I shouldn't have done this. And, I think once you know how hard it's going to be, it's harder. It's better that I went into it not knowing, you know,
Yeah.
what it was going to all be. So yeah, that's a hard question if I would flip a switch one way or the other. I don't know.
Yeah. You want all the lessons and none of the accident. Yeah. I want to learn everything I learned to just not have to go through that again to do it.
Exactly.
What was the moment like? Was it a moment or was it going further back now? Uh, was there a conversation? I'm guessing that your parents, your dad, ultimately was the one that said, okay, you're ready. We can put you out there with the family. You can go do this professionally with us. How old were you when that happened? Do you remember that incident or that conversation? Or was it more of a gradually then suddenly, and now I'm doing it? Or was there a conversation where, okay, Liana, we think you're ready. Let's go.
Yeah.
And how did you
Um,
feel?
yeah, so it was when I was 13, told
Okay.
them I wanted to work, so I started training. They saw I was practicing. And it's both my mom and dad were out there with me. And I don't remember a conversation necessarily, but they said, okay, you'll perform at our next performance with us. And you start out small. I didn't do a whole lot. I just walked out and did what we call the salute on the wire. So you start not very many skills. You build your skills as time goes on. First down low and then start working it up high. So yeah, I mean, they saw that I was a good enough wire walker. They saw that I had the mental strength
Hmm.
to do it. And that I was ability wise, I was capable physically to do it. And yeah, so it's kind of just how it went. It just kind of happened.
Are there mentors or examples outside of the industry that you look to that have helped you in the industry? You looked at their challenges or their successes or their path,
That's a
and
good question.
it's helped inspire you in what you do?
Gosh, I can't think of anyone right now. It's really like my mom and dad are,
Yeah.
course, a big, my great grandfather's example of his never giving up. He had been through so many tragedies and kept pushing. Didn't quite understand that back when I was a kid until after the accident. I kind of understand him more now. But, yeah, I would say my mom and dad, and honestly, their walk with the Lord is what inspired me. They raised my brother and I up in the Lord, and seeing, they had gone through, hard things in their life, and seeing that their faith was always in God is probably what has kind of inspired me more than anything.
Yeah.
They were a great example of that.
What what's next? So you're going down to Florida, you got this, the shows you're going to do there, but let's go further out. When you do get to that point where you finally say, you know what, I think I'm going to step off the wire now under my terms this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And obviously speaking, and you talked about other businesses. What are the big goals that you have out there beyond walking on the wire?
Yeah, I'm still really in the wire walking. I still want to do lot more big walks and stuff. I got one
Yeah.
coming up with my brother this winter, which I'm super excited about. But
Can you tell us about it or not yet?
I don't know. He hasn't told me if I can.
All right, well then don't. Yeah, let us know when you can.
Yeah, yeah. But I really want to start speaking more, and in particular, speaking from the wire. I think it's
Yeah, I saw a video of you doing
interesting.
that at a church or a youth
Yeah,
conference
a
or
youth
something. That's
conference.
pretty
Yeah, my
cool.
brother and I did that about 6 weeks ago now, I think. But I really want to start doing more of that. And, not every speaking event has the room for that, but maybe at different levels, smaller wire, higher wire, or just
Yeah,
straight up speaking. I really I get really stressed out sometimes before speaking, but it's so rewarding. And once I step foot on stage, I'm totally fine, right?
yeah.
It's so rewarding to hear all the people come up and say how I inspired them for this or that or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of my hope.
I would imagine standing on a flat stage without the balance pole is probably in some case they say that public speaking is the number one fear, dying is the number two fear.
Yeah.
I would imagine falling off a wire has got to be up there as well. So if you're standing on the stage, you're not going to fall. So that's reassuring.
Yes.
Are you doing any writing? Have you written this story? Or are you
I worked on a book a little bit. I'm working with my book agent to kind of get back at that a bit. I've
Yeah,
been pulled away. Life is busy, but I
yeah.
really would like to write a book kind of telling my story a bit more. So yeah, yeah.
What do you do outside of motherhood and wire walking to, your faith is strong, obviously, things that you do just to kind of fill your cup to, get out there and get Liana time, if you will.
Gosh, I don't know. Our whole life kind of revolves around wire walking. I'm also a costume designer here in Vegas. I do wardrobe, I do costumes. So I love that, make my
Nice.
own costumes as well. And like when I go to Florida, my sister-in-law also does all the costumes for their show, so I'll be in there with her building costumes, which like I grew up with such a close-knit family. My mom, my dad, my brother, and I traveling together all the time. It was the four of us. And so now with my sister-in-law, like we're best friends. And so it's that. My mom will come over, we'll have late night sewing, like that kind of stuff is what fills my cup. Being with family. My nephew has a 21-month-old, my niece has a 6-week old. To be down there and be
Mhm.
with them is like really great. So it's a lot of it revolves around my family, and like what we do for fun often is we go practice. I know it
Yeah,
sounds so
right.
silly. My sister and I are like, let's go practice, wire, other aerial stuff. That's fun. I'm really looking forward to going down and working with these men that my brother is training for the wire. I really enjoy training people. And so that'll be 2 times a day. It'll be intense. It'll be very physically challenging, but I love it. I love that. So that's kind of what I love to do.
No, hey, if you can turn your passion into your, I won't call it hobby, but something that you love to do. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I know professional golfers who on their days off go play golf.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can love it. It's what I do for a living, but hey, I want to go, I play golf recreationally. I don't do it professionally, but I would imagine if I did it professionally, I'd probably like to go tee it up with my family and my friends and so forth as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
how would you describe if there are two or three words, and I hate that two or three words question. I hate that I'm even asking it, but it came to mind, so I will. That describe your family. Just how would you describe the Wallenda family? If somebody that you just met for the first time, you met people at the NSA conference, you meet people every day that haven't heard your
Sure.
story. How would you describe the family and the why behind why the Wallendas have done this for so many generations?
Well, it depends on if we're talking about my great grandfather, I was a year old when he died, but from what I hear about him, he was incredible. He was famously quoted saying, "Life is on the wire, the rest is just waiting." Because walking the wire was living for him. That was everything. Kind of like I told you, we love to practice and all. So he had such a drive, there had been many accidents in the family back in his generation, and he kept pushing through. And honestly, as a kid, I didn't understand that. It's like, why would you
Yeah.
do that?
There's several deaths in the family from this, from what I read.
My grandmother watched her husband, who would have been my step grandfather, fall to his death in front of her eyes, which it's just like, it's so brutal. But he really did have a never give up mentality, so much so that after the seven fell in 1962 in Detroit, he was able to grab onto the wire, but broke some ribs and was in the hospital. Now, two family members had died. Great uncle was paralyzed from the waist down, and my grandfather Carl was in the hospital with broken ribs and something else. But he checked himself out the next day and went back to this arena where the circus was being performed and did a three-person act with his brother and his nephew because it was like, no, the show's got to go on no
Show
matter
must go
what.
on was just crossing my head as you said it. Yep.
Yes. And I didn't quite understand that either, but it really it's about that work ethic. And I think he's passed that down to the generations after because, we really do have a strong work ethic that no matter what, we're gonna perform and or whatever it is. It might not be performing, it might be like digging that ditch in our backyard that's got to get done and we don't want to do it. Like you're gonna do it no matter what. You're gonna show up, whatever it is, you gotta always show up and do it all to your best ability. And I think
Yeah.
that's valuable this day and age. I think that's kind of been lost with a lot of people in this later generation. And I think it's a valuable thing that I hope to pass on to my son. So yeah, that was my great grandfather. My mom and dad, raising my brother and I, they exemplified that as well. It was tough traveling with performing is sometimes very glamorous and wonderful, but it's also really grueling and hard. And we set up and tear down our own equipment, which is really really physically taxing, and make our
Yeah.
own costumes. My dad built all our rigging, did all our driving, breakdowns on the side of the road, driving overnight to the next city. I mean, it was hard, and they just trudged through it all the time and pushed through. And and like I said, their faith in God was like the most valuable thing they could have possibly passed on to my brother and I. So that's more than a few words.
That's okay. No, that's great. I'm glad I asked the question because you delivered a lot of nuggets there that will be great for me and for so many people who are watching and listening. What's it like to be on that wire? Just what's that feeling of just not so much the getting across the wire. I'm sure that the feeling when you're stepping onto the wire is much different than the feeling when you're stepping off. But what's the journey from stepping off the platform onto the next one? Just describe that feeling.
Look, it depends. I love it. It's very peaceful in a way. It feels it's like I let's go back to golfing. It's like if you're a good golfer and you love it and you even that hitting that golf ball feels so good. It's that kind of it feels so good walking the wire when you
Yeah.
feel. But, after the accident, I talk about how I had my breakthrough moment, but that fear, it's not one and done. That fear comes back. And so I'll talk about this last wire walk I did with my brother that we just at the youth conference we just mentioned. I had been down in Florida for 2 weeks, training hard, felt really confident, really strong, really ready to go. But the night before the walk, I thought, I'd made this costume and I better go sit down and stand up in the wire in it to make sure it feels functional and all. I'd put stretch panels down the side. It should have been fine. And I went and the sitting down and standing up, I'm a little bit in my head about it ever since it's not the sitting down, it's the standing up ever since the accident because it's the way the balancing pole moves and all. Totally competent and fine, but it's just something in my head. So I went and practiced it, and the costume was really restricting in my knee, like bending my knee. But I was like, no, I'm not going to be a baby here. I'm going to push through. I'm going to do this. And I did it like 5 times, just kept pushing through, not comfortable, but did it. And the sixth time when I got up, it's a little wonky, perfectly safe. I was fine, but my foot wasn't real sure-footed when I put it back on the wire to stand up. And it was kind of scary. And my sister-in-law noticed it. She goes, I didn't like that, Lee. And I said, yeah, me neither. So we ended up going into her sewing room. My mom came over. We were up till 2 a.m. doing a different costume altogether so that I'd feel confident because I didn't want to worry about that when I was up there with no safety up,
And now you don't have a good night's sleep, which can't be healthy either.
no,
Yeah.
not a good night's sleep. 100%. But I'd rather have less sleep and have a costume I feel confident in.
Yeah. The
So,
adrenaline will get you through.
yeah, but I'll tell you, when I stepped out on that wire and started walking, I hate to admit this, but I kept seeing myself falling. And I feel like those are those lies coming back in your head.
Sure.
And my brother had said beforehand, hey, if you don't want to sit down, you could just back in. Because normally I sit down, he steps over me, I stand up, we go opposite directions.
Yeah.
And I'm walking out there and I started to entertain that thought and think, maybe I'll just back in. And then I said, no, no, these are all lies from the pit of hell. I am so ready for this. And yeah, it's scary, but I'm not just someone who hasn't trained for this I've done this my whole life. I've trained hard for
Right.
this. I do have the ability to do this. And so, it was interesting because it wasn't that like, oh, I love this moment. It was like until I got done with the sitting down and standing up. But I did. I sat down. We sat there for about 20 minutes and took Q&A from the audience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then my brother stepped over me, and I was mic'd, and I said, "Okay, guys, this one I'm a little bit in my head about." And I stood up, and it was really perfectly easy. And that's when that, oh, this is all fun kind of feeling came
That's
back
so
because I
cool.
got through that part. But it's interesting because after such a nearly tragic, I guess not tragic because we were all alive and well, but after such a devastating fall,
Yeah.
those thoughts do come into my head, and it is about having a strong mind and remembering how hard I had trained for this. Because again, it would be easy to say, yeah, I don't want to do this, but I do want to do it. I do love
Yeah.
doing it. If I did it more consistently, like every day, I think that would go away. But our walks are bigger and few and far between lately, so it still comes back. But I got to remind myself of who I am. Got to remember who I am again. You know?
So I think of your life, forgive me for labeling it this way, and it's not fair for me to do it, but I'm picturing three chapters. Not if you're writing a book, three chapters, but three chapters of Liana Wallenda's life. Pre fall,
Yep.
fall,
Yep.
post fall.
Yeah.
Where did you learn the most?
Post fall.
How so?
Because that's the time that I had to really push through all those fears and weed through all these lies in my head. Are those lies, or am I really a failure? Am I really not good at this? That's when I had to dig deep. I was in the trauma unit, trach tube, feeding tube, jaw wired shut, teeth sheared on half, teeth knocked out. Didn't feel real cute, let me tell you, because my face was swollen out to here.
Well, for those that are watching, there's no physical. When you're looking, if you're just listening, you might have an image. If you're watching, you recognize that, the surgeons have done a masterful job, let's say.
Yeah, it's all the glory to God, man. I never had plastic surgery. It just kind of put me back together. So praise God. But I turned 40 in the trauma unit, had been recently divorced a few years prior. And so that I was like the single mom that felt like a monster, didn't know if I could walk the wire. And that was hard, and I had to really dig deep in those moments and remember who I am. And my value to this world is not because I can walk a wire or how pretty I look on stage. My value is because God created me to be in this world, and He's going to use me in whatever form I am. And I'm valuable because I'm a daughter of the one true King. And
Yeah.
so, I had to really learn that in those moments. As a female performer, you kind of rely on like, oh, do I look good enough and stuff. And so that was hard having that kind of taken away from me
Sure.
for quite a period of time. It took, a couple of years for all that swelling to go down on my face and all. And my face is a little different shaped. I'm very blessed, but it is like this side's a little bigger than this side and not noticeable to the naked eye really, but
You
I
didn't
can
know,
see
you
it.
wouldn't
I
know.
can see
Yeah.
it. No, I'm very blessed. I'm very, very thankful and very blessed. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard, but
Yeah.
I, just kept pushing through and yeah, without my faith in God, I don't know how I would have come out of this.
So next to your son, I'm guessing the person that you're probably closest to would be your brother because you've trained since you were a child. You perform now together. What is your hope for Nick?
For Nick, it's interesting. He's been on my heart lately. I've been praying for him lately. I don't know why. For him to continue to be successful. He's been incredibly successful in this business. He's had several primetime TV specials and has several Guinness Book World
Hmm.
Records. To continue to be successful, to make sure he makes time for his grandbabies, which he's in love with his grandbabies. He's
Hmm.
the happiest grandpa I've ever seen.
I know that feeling,
Yeah, I'm a great aunt and I'm in love with them. I'm like,
right?
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so blessed with them. The 21-month-old already knows me. So like the auntie like sees pictures of me. It's like, oh. So yeah, I mean, and just for him to, continue to, he speaks as well. And I think we've both been really blessed in that we've been given this platform of wire walking, but we've been able to use it in certain places to glorify God, which is the biggest honor. Pray that he continues to get opportunities to do that. And I'd love to do them with him more, you know?
Yeah. I look forward to seeing you both perform in person as well. A quote that I've heard many times, and I don't know if I've ever heard it from you, but it seems like this would be applicable to wire walking. And that is, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. It
Yeah.
seems to me that that would be very applicable to what you do because you can't be thinking about which way do I step? And you can't have all these things in your head, to your point. And you've talked about times when you were in your head, and other times when it just felt like you didn't remember who you were. So
Yeah.
that's got to be that great feeling of getting across and just, man, I don't
Yeah.
remember walking the wire today.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say I always train at least 3 times. Like if we're doing two
Yeah.
shows a day, I have the people I train do the act 6 times in a row, right? So you have that extra strength. However, it's a delicate balance because you don't want to get to that point where you're too comfortable. You have to remember that you are on a high wire, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet in the air,
Respect
and
it for
this is
sure.
life or death. So it's a
Yeah.
delicate balance, to train till you can't get it wrong, but there's always that margin for error there. There always is.
Yeah. It's
You
a
never
great point. You don't want to get complacent. This is not a profession for people who tend to get complacent.
never. Yeah,
Yeah.
never.
How do people reach you? They want to see you perform. They want to have you come speak. A lot of my audience are high level executives and corporations. They're looking for keynote speakers and so forth. What's the best way to reach you?
I guess through my website, it's highwireproject.com.
Okay, I'll put that in the notes from the show.
Contact me through there. A lot of people reach out through social media, Instagram, you know, X or something like that. But my website is where you could, officially reach me.
Okay. Here's the free form portion of the conversation, and then I'll end with my last question. What did I miss? Anything that you wanted to talk about today that we missed, or is there anything just other interviews you've done? Oh, I really liked that question. I wish Ed would have asked this, or anything come to mind that we didn't talk about that you'd like to share?
I mean, there's so many different little tidbits, but I think what I'd like to share to the audience is, I don't know, ever since my accident, I have a heart for people that are going through something. Everyone's fallen off of a wire, I say,
Mm-hmm.
not a literal wire, but everyone's fallen off of a wire. And that kind of fear to get back up on that wire, it grips us sometimes. And I just have a heart for those people. And I want to encourage anyone listening that's trying to get back to it, whatever their wire is, that to keep pushing through that, do that prep work, do that training, whatever it is, but you need a step. You take that first step because you were born for this. You were made to this. Don't believe those lies in your head that you're not good enough,
Yeah.
because you are good enough.
Excellent. Well, you answered my last question before I could
Uh,
ask it. My last question I always ask is, what's in your heart? You kind of already talked about that, but no, I'll just ask it anyway and see if there's anything you want to add on. Just when you think, Liana, what's in your heart?
yeah, it's to, hopefully my heart is to inspire people. There's so much pain in this world, and I think about all the pain I went through with the physical, emotional through the accident, and I don't want to have gone through that, to not use it for the greater good, right? To inspire people that they're going to get through whatever their wire fall is. So yeah, it's kind of the same answer, but just believe in yourself. You're so much stronger than you know. I think we can go through so many more things than we realize when we're put to the test. Keep
Yeah.
your eyes on God and you'll get through it.